Hello everyone, welcome back to another beautiful episode of Dastardly EZ Finds. I'm Joey, and I am your host of nearly 15 years. It's almost my 15-year DM birthday, and today I am here with Antonio, as always.
Hi guys, Antonio here. You know me, beloved player of this little group here. The one who's always keeping things in perspective, right? I'm clearly the brains of this whole operation.
Clearly 6'5".
Clearly 6'5".
Brandish Greek physique.
You know, Joe.
The mind of Mephistopheles. You know, he's got.
I don't like to brag.
All of
I don't
it
like
going,
to brag.
Yeah.
I like trying to stay home.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, you know me, player for almost 5 years now. Starting to run games on our Discord. So if you guys are interested in that, check that out sometime. But all that out of the way, we actually have a special guest here with us, and would you like to introduce yourself and just introduce the game a little bit? Just give us the title.
Great. Hello, and thanks for having me. I'm Dr. Bowers from the YouTube channel PhD&D. That's with the ampersand. And I present content and material about tabletop role-playing games, particularly 5e, from a perspective informed by, an academic expert on philosophy and literature. I'm also the creative lead on a new TTRPG that is on Kickstarter right now. It's called 5 Acts, The King in Yellow RPG. And this is a storytelling game based on Robert W. Chambers' celebrated 1895 collection of short stories called The King in Yellow.
All right, fantastic. And Joe, wait, there's no getting into anything, Joe. If I remember correctly,
Well, Antonio, I'm just saying, man. Yeah, we just go. And Dr. Bowers, very, very, very cool. I love the King in Yellow. It's one of my favorites, actually. I'm a big Lovecraftian boy, and me and Antonio, we're making a kind of eldritch angelic horror off of, kind of taking inspiration from Lovecraft and biblical stuff as well. So it's really, really cool. I really like it. So it's gonna be a lot of me gushing off of this stuff. So don't mind me. But yeah, I am somewhat. I have only gotten my minor in psychology, so I tend to also love the study of D&D and things on a psychological platform. Because it's a lot of fun. So I totally understand. That's really, really cool, and I'll have to watch your stuff. I will.
Please.
It's gonna be fun. But
it's very common for people who are interested in the King in Yellow to associate that idea or that character or that stage play about that character with Lovecraft. And that's a very interesting phenomenon because, of course, Lovecraft himself was a fan of Robert W. Chambers' writings, in particular The King in Yellow. Lovecraft mentioned The King in Yellow, and in particular the story The Yellow Sign, in his essay on supernatural horror in literature. He praised it, and he loved it so much that he even included references to Chambers' work in his story, The Whisperer in Darkness. This is the story in which the Mi-Go first appear. And thanks to the work of Lovecraft's dear friend and most devoted anthologist, August Derleth, people now remember the King in Yellow as associated with a kind of Lovecraftian cosmology. This is because Derleth spent a great deal of time and effort constructing an extended cosmology and theology that included and gave systematic roles to all of the various creations that Lovecraft otherwise referenced casually in his work. Right, so Lovecraft, of course, refers to Cthulhu in The Call of Cthulhu, and there's references to Yog-Sothoth in stories like The Festival, and so on. But Lovecraft was not a, systematic theologian when it came to what he described as Yog-Sothothery. Instead, he sort of let his creations hang there in the isolation and mystery that each story built around them. Derleth, however, decided to take Lovecraft's works, spin them into an elaborate sort of systematic theology, And here it's helpful to compare Derleth's work with, say, the religion of ancient Greece, which had its dodecatheism, its 12 Olympian gods, and the various ways in which those gods are related, and their, progeny and mini-gods and stuff. Derleth was doing that kind of a thing. And because he wanted to include not only Lovecraft's creations, but also the creations of which Lovecraft was fond, Derleth stumbled across some work from Chambers, and he took a few ideas, or at least words, from Chambers' stories, including The King in Yellow, and, curiously enough, Hastur, and he kind of wove them into the Lovecraftian cosmology he was coming up with. But the way he wove them into it is, well, to be blatant, making things up, making some shit up. Right?
As one normally does in this situation.
Of course.
So like, although
making shit up, technically.
Okay, so it's kind of like when Thor says in the MCU, all words are made up, or like all names are made up. But here's the thing: is that Robert W. Chambers was a very unique sort of writer with a very unique vision about horror, and I really want to, and we aimed to in our game, bring people's attention to this fact that he's not a mere precursor to Lovecraft, and his horror is not just something that's like you put it on the same shelf as Cthulhu or whatever. I mean, they're in the same zip code, I would say, Lovecraft and Chambers. But Chambers is right next door to Edgar Allan Poe and Charles Baudelaire and Gothic writers like that, whereas Lovecraft is a bit separated from him. So we think Chambers, or at least I think Chambers, has a unique take on cosmic horror, which is kind of informed by it's informed by Christianity, and especially informed by the 19th century enlightenment.
I think we also just a common man associates it that way because it's just easier for us. Most people don't read too deep into it, so
well, yeah, it's true. It's true. Chambers' actual stories, I don't think, are as widely read as Lovecraft's. Although I do feel with franchises like True Detective and so forth, there's an increased interest in Chambers, and so people are actually picking up the short story anthology from 1895, The King in Yellow, and reading its. And
like I said, it's a great set of stories, and like I said, I absolutely love it. I think it's a lot of fun. And even to put it to the side, there is just like it's one of those things where I myself don't take a lot of inspiration from it myself, but I do love the stories, and I think it's really, really cool, and I love the origins and everything, and I think the idea for a kind of like a tabletop game for like a role playing game is incredible. So it kind of definitely kind of strikes me in this first question I have for you, actually. So one of my first questions is what do you think? This is more personal than it is about the game. Just so you know. So, in your opinion, what do you think your greatest achievement is in the King, the 5X King in Yellow RPG?
That's a great. First of all, I do want to thank you for expressing that enthusiasm for Chambers' stories. I do want to stress that if you enjoy Robert W. Chambers' King in Yellow stories, if you enjoy his fiction, you will love our game, because our game really is a love letter to those short stories. As far as what I'm most proud of in this game, it is a particular mechanic that takes center stage. It's not the only mechanic, but it is a core mechanic, and it's this. All of the players control characters who have read the stage play The King in Yellow. And since reading the stage play The King in Yellow, they believe themselves to have supernatural powers and to be burdened with a supernatural purpose that is to conquer the world with the power of the yellow sign. And in order to do this, they get together and they consult that stage play. They flip open the stage play The King in Yellow and consult it. And the way that they do it is this. They flip it open. They find a scary illustration in the stage play. Our version of the stage play has illustrations. And then they interpret it as a set of instructions. So gameplay-wise, here's how that goes, right? The player characters get together, and one player has their character flip open the stage play, and the player describes a scary illustration, right? So the idea is there you are sitting at the gaming table, it's your turn, and you and your companions and in-universe are consulting the stage play. So you, player, come up with a scary image. A single, static, scary image. Something that, confronts the imagination as being spooky. Could be simple, could be complex, it could be grisly, gory, cover, to a Cannibal Corpse album thing, or it could be, muted and mysterious and subtle. But the idea is that it needs to be a scary image.
I'm just saying, some of those images, like I Piss Blood, man. That's one of my favorites. My favorite songs.
Wait, what?
I a podcast with fellow metalheads. That is pretty cool. So the idea is that the first player comes up with a scary image. They roll a check to make sure that their character can hang on to that scary image. That they can, grip it with their imagination. And if they succeed, then the play goes to the next player. And the next player has to take that image, and interpret it as a set of instructions. Right?
Okay.
What is this illustration telling us to do? What must we do to fulfill our destiny? Right? The stage play presents us with an image of some skeletons working in a butcher shop, or in a butchery. Skeletons working in a butchery. That's a spooky image. What is it telling us to do? What is the image? Should we dig up some skeletons and put them in a butcher shop? Should we go into the butcher shop and reduce some people to skeletons? Should we?
Yeah.
Right? And the idea is, it's open-ended. It's very open-ended. This is a game about creativity and storytelling and coming up with and being a part of a horror story, rather than it is like with more conventional TTRPGs about resource management, where it's like, how many hit points do I have? How many spell slots do I have? It's my turn. Let me roll a d20, add a numeric modifier, see if it meets or beats a certain number. If it does, then I change the amount of hit points or spell slots that are in play. And we sort of roll d20s and add numeric modifiers and manage assets, manage resources that way. Our game isn't like that. Our game has mechanics which is designed to help tell a story. They thought of a scary image. You interpret it as instructions. And of course, once you propose an interpretation, that player makes a check, see if that's the right interpretation, and if so, off you are to follow these instructions. Right? So what happens almost invariably in this game, which is a one-shot game, right? What happens is the player characters, they get together, they consult the play, The King in Yellow, they deduce from it that they need to do something. It's almost always criminal, right? And as they're, going to the video rental shop and knocking someone out with a tire iron or whatever they end up doing, right? Like they're pointing to a stage play and being like, no, you have to understand, we're just doing this because, and then they King in Yellow, right? So in a lot of other Eldritch horror games like Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green or what have you, right? Reading the forbidden text, reading the Necronomicon, reading the Eldritch Grimoire is the end of your character, right? If your character reads the Necronomicon in Call of Cthulhu, their sanity goes bye-bye, and with them, your character goes bye-bye, right? Sanity going to zero is, that's game over.
That's no bueno.
No bueno indeed.
In our game, reading the forbidden text, reading The King in Yellow, the stage play is the beginning of your story, not the end.
That's different.
Right? You begin the story as someone who is either supernaturally enlightened and endowed with unearthly powers, or as someone who has lost their shit. And by the end of the game, we actually have a phase of play at the very end of the game where you go back and forth between these interpretations of what really happened, right? Did you actually use your supernatural powers to get the guards to go to sleep, to sneak past them? Or did you just flip the hell out in public and, pull out a Glock and shoot those guards? Or maybe you ran away and just made up the fact that you put them to sleep or what,
just
right?
in
Like,
your head, Antonio. Sorry, man.
You know, Joe. You can't prove that, Joe. You can't prove it's just all in my head,
can't
Joe.
prove them. They've got 2 holes in their sternum, sir. I don't
Those
know what you mean. You didn't sneak fast.
Those were there when I got here.
Look. There's no holes. Fills the hole with dirt. It's fine.
See, the holes are gone.
They're
There
just
you go.
asleep. They're just asleep.
He's just resting.
And so this is a game about playing an unreliable narrator in a horror story. And that's, by the way, that's what Chambers stories are about. The 4 celebrated horror stories from the anthology The King in Yellow, they all feature unreliable narrators. People who are desperate, who are distraught, emotionally disturbed, they've read The King in Yellow, and then they report some supernatural craziness happening. And because of who they are and their circumstances, you're made to wonder whether there's really this craziness or whether they are just, well, to put it insensitively, crazy. Yeah. And I want to mention, our game does take care to think about the social aspects of this sort of pretense, right? Call of Cthulhu and other games, they have what's called a sanity meter, and that often rubs people the wrong way, right? Like, you know, if you're concerned about the realities of psychological health, if you're sensitive to the fact that, say, schizophrenic people are more likely to be victims of abuse than they are to be abusers or criminals, right? You might not sit well with the sanity meter. And so our game doesn't talk about sanity or insanity or playing as someone insane at all. We talk instead about being deluded or being delusional, with an emphasis on the fact that there are many ways or reasons why someone might be delusional. You might be delusional because you have a fever. You might be delusional because you're on drugs. You might be delusional because you're wandering through the desert and seeing a mirage, right? There are a lot of different reasons to be delusional. So that's another difference between our game and, say, like a traditional Eldritch horror. Okay. And in addition to the fact that, like, our game is about unreliable narrators, not investigators, right? In Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green, the player characters are almost always investigators. They investigate mysteries, they find clues, they solve things. Chambers stories don't revolve around investigators. Nobody does any investigating in Chambers stories, any more than Edgar Allan Poe's stories feature investigators. They almost never do. Instead, they're always like troubled people, like, you know, the Telltale Heart.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even say in a lot of Lovecraftian work, they're not typically investigators either. It's like a dude and his apprentice, and then his apprentice is like, oh, hey, I had a dream about this thing. And then he's like, that thing's not real. And then, like, 5 seconds later, he's like, wait, actually, this other guy had some dreams about this. But, it's totally something interesting. I definitely like that idea. I do. I mean, I am a big fan of the Call of Cthulhu series in TTRPG format myself. So I also... grew around it. So, like, for me, I definitely love it, and I noticed that you also have like a difference in die. Like you give some other dice some pretty good love there. You have D10s and D4s, D12s. I don't see like a
the
D20.
Dreaded
D20 has a special place in my heart, but you know, I am also one to peer off and look a little. You know, I'm cheating with my other dice. You know, I've got a little side thing going on with them. Sorry, Antonio. Just don't tell them. Don't tell my D20.
Joe. I don't know if you know this. This is an audio podcast.
The group chat, the chats, they got leaked.
I'm just saying, Joe. The roll chat got leaked, and the D20 knows. I'm just saying.
I knew it. But yeah, you mind telling us about like the different usages of die in the game?
Sure, absolutely. So our system, in terms of dice, we use the Resistance Toolbox, which is the system designed by Grant Howitt and Christopher Taylor. For their company Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. They used it in the games Spire, The City Must Fall, and Heart, The City Beneath. And they've thankfully placed that system in the Creative Commons because it is awesome. It is an amazing sort of little dice system that is good for modeling horror. So the way that it works, if I may go into a little bit of detail, is whenever you want to do a thing, whenever you want to do anything where there's a risk of failure, you roll 2d10s. 2d10s and take the higher number. There is a little caveat. We do have character classes, and each character class is distinguished by a certain special power they have or think they have. And if you're using your special power, you can roll 3d10s, not 2d10s, and take the higher number of them again. But after rolling your D10 pool, you take the highest number in that pool, and then you look on a chart. And the idea is, if you roll a 1 through 5, you fail and suffer strain, which is like damage. Only when you suffer damage in our game, it's not like you have a pool of hit points from which the damage is subtracted. No.
Mhm.
You start at 0 and you build strain up from 0 by D4s always. So if you roll a 1 through 5, that means you fail to do what you were trying to, and you suffer 1d4 strain.
Mhm.
If you roll a 6 or 7, you succeed what you're trying to do, succeed at what you're trying to do, but you also suffer a d4 strain. So this is success at a cost, 6 or 7, right?
Damn.
And if
we're saying success from failure from success, huh?
Yeah, and then 8 through 10 is success without a cost. That's you succeed at what you're trying to do, but no strain, right?
That's kind of silly. I love that. That's really funny. You could definitely do some. Antonio, I imagine, I'm just like, Antonio's like, I grow extra spider limbs and climb over the wall. No. In reality, you just see him, like, scraping his nails, getting up there. God. You're like, oh, that can't be good for him.
Oh, God.
As you are correctly anticipating, the unreliable nature of the PCs as narrators, right? It comes into the second half of this mechanic, which I'm about to lay out, right? Every time you suffer strain, you roll the dreaded D12. You roll a D12 every time you suffer strain. If the D12 roll is above your strain total, you're fine. You just keep the strain and keep on keeping on, right? But if the D12 is equal to or less than your strain total, erase all your strain and gain a monstrous feature. Become more monstrous.
Okay.
Right? And this is an opportunity for player creativity, right? This is where it's like, you tell me how you become more monstrous. And the idea is that you've got a subtle monstrous feature, that's what you get first, then a blatant monstrous feature, and then a critical monstrous feature. And after 3, if you gain 1 more, then it's sort of a bad ending for you. Not necessarily a game over, although you can play that way. But because it's a one-shot game, we like the idea that all players can play till the end. So it's more like you get a bad ending. But you slowly become more monstrous every time you gain a monstrous feature. So the idea is this. You go about trying to do things. There's a disproportionately high chance that you're going to suffer strain, even if you succeed. As you suffer strain, the strain builds and builds and builds and builds. At first, those D12 rolls don't matter because, your strain is so little. But as the strain builds, there's an increasing chance that D12 roll is going to be below your strain. In that case, you're going to become more monstrous. And that can happen 3 times before, yikes, you've got a really bad ending to this game. And so it's basically the stress system from, like, Heart the City Beneath, except for we've simplified it a bit, and we've put it in the service of a game that is mostly about narrative mechanics, mostly about storytelling, and most of whose rules are about story beats and kind of, well, now you interpret this image that someone else came up with, or now you reinterpret what you did back there, and that's.
I'm just gonna be like, Antonio, I need you to draw yourself. What was it? What kind of monstrous feature? I have an extra toe.
I can
for my first.
The subtle one was like maybe an eye somewhere, in the head or something like that. That was my first thought. I was just like, ooh, that.
You grow another set of jaws.
Okay, Joe, that I feel like that's gonna be like a more blatant one.
No, I know. I don't know, man. I mean, you're right. I mean, hey, I'm just saying, sharks got a bunch of teeth, man. We don't see them until we're right there, right in front of their face.
Hey,
man.
Hold up.
Hey.
We cannot. Hang on.
I got throat teeth.
Bauer, give me 1 second. I'll get right to. Hang on. We cannot say that you having an extra set of jaws is a subtle, monstrous.
Come on, Antonio, you can hide it. I think you can do it.
I'm gonna put one of those little those nurse masks on. What we're doing here?
Come on, dude, just throw on a COVID mask.
Oh yeah, totally.
If we were playing right now and we were adjudicating the monstrous feature and it had to be subtle, I would definitely allow rows of teeth, because as long as you keep your mouth and actually that's very scary. So I mean, I would be like, way to go, that's a good choice. Rows of teeth.
I was looking through your PDF with the organist.
Oh.
And my immediate thought when you said that, I was like, man, that'd be insane. But like, I would probably be like, I would like to have a little extra appendages to perhaps play a little better, play the music better.
I found that most players go for the eyes when it comes to a monstrous feature. They almost always say, well, my eyes are cat's eyes, or my eyes are lizard eyes, my eyes flash, or something like that. But there are a lot of ways for someone to be subtly monstrous. In fact, because it's subtle, it doesn't need to be any kind of real narrative cost. It's just like, well, I'm hunched over so that people don't see my tail, or whatever. But it's, again, the fun is sort of in describing it, not so much that it's like, well, you have a tail, so you get a -1 penalty to your dex check. Blah, blah, blah.
I stuff my tail into my pants, and people get suspicious of me. They're like,
Tail
are you happy to see me, or are you just?
That'd be some fun to be had there.
Yeah, no, I could definitely think of that. And just like Antonio, I'm just sitting here like, how do you transform subtly? I grow like burrs on my feet, so tall it makes me look like I'm wearing heels.
Wait, burrs? Yeah. What?
Listen, hey, man,
I guess it could work.
Hey, every once in a while you're thinking too hard on the cosmic knowledge, and you just grow an extra burr too. Okay, it happens all the time.
By the way, that's a good topic, is the role that knowledge plays in cosmic horror, because I think that that's very different between Lovecraft and Chambers. When it comes
cosmic knowledge is definitely something.
Yeah. Well, I think as folks who love Lovecraft's works, and I do too, I think we all know that for H.P. Lovecraft, there's a very specific trope where you've learned too much. Or, you know too much about the universe, right? The opening lines to the Call of Cthulhu is, the most merciful thing in the universe is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents, right? If we could actually put together the truth, we would realize how alien and hostile the universe is, and how its nature outstrips our conceptual resources, that we just can't grasp how horribly alien everything is.
It's
right?
silly that you say that too, because like I love when people say like Earth is so habitable, like it is like, my brother, you're aware every part of Earth is trying to kill us, right? And, and people are like, the cosmic knowledge and everything, like that stuff's scary, and like, oh man, if we had something like that. And I'm like,
we do.
We definitely have some things that
that's kind of Lovecraft's point, is that you don't need to go to the alien city of R'lyeh under the waves in order to be struck by how hostile the universe is to us. You just need to know about R'lyeh, and that's enough for you to realize it. But Robert W. Chambers' type of horror is very different from Lovecraft's in this way. And it helps to know a little bit about Chambers. Chambers, unlike Lovecraft, Chambers saw himself as a sort of a man of leisure and a playboy. He was a Christian. He was all-American. He loves God and country, and
I think you're just describing Antonio.
I wish you wouldn't call me out like that. Yeah, I thought we had talked about this. We said we keep it on the down low. Like, what are we doing here, Joe? This is a live podcast, so what are we doing? What are we doing?
I'm throwing it out there.
Sorry.
Robert W. Chambers was a kind of Dudley Do-Right. He believes in God and freedom and optimism and true love and the future and democracy and all this stuff. And he loved going outdoors and fly fishing and catching butterflies and hunting and all that stuff. And he goes to France as a relatively young man to learn painting. And while he's there, he meets the decadents, who are his very opposite. The French decadents are nihilistic, pessimistic, atheistic, don't care about anything. They're utterly nocturnal. They wake up at like 5 p.m, stay up all night.
I think this is getting a little too close to home for me right now, Antonio. Man, what the hell? He just described to both of us, one after the other. Antonio met me in the forest, and I'm sitting there munching on some greens.
Sorry, man.
So one thing that we should mention is that the stage play The King in Yellow in Chambers Stories, this stage play that, affects anyone who reads it so that they become delusional or disappear under mysterious circumstances or both. The stage play focuses on this other world called Carcosa. And it doesn't just focus on that world, it focuses on how that world is lost. Utterly lost. Lost Carcosa, and how bad it is that Carcosa is lost and people obsess over it. And I think that for Chambers, when he encountered the French decadence and he was exposed to their ideology, he found it as a source of horror. So that The King in Yellow, as a stage play, what it is, it's like if it communicates the decadent ideology as a truth, right? That according to the stage play, if you read the stage play, you discover that there is no God, heaven has been destroyed, there's nowhere to go when you die, nobody that you love in this world will ever love you back, we can never truly communicate with each other, nothing matters, and that's the truth of it all, and it's utterly devastating.
And that brings up a really good point.
Very different from Lovecraft, right?
It does, of course.
Just think, like, you can't even understand the world is too alien.
Yeah.
Chambers, like, oh yes, you can understand the world.
The world is too. Is it in itself something alien? So I mean, yeah, it's a little crazy. It's definitely a different view of something that's kind of like, I guess, like Lovecraft gets so much attention for being like, oh wow, and then the funny part that a lot of people don't know, I know about Lovecraftian stuff, is like 90% of the works aren't actually like they're Lovecraftian, but they are not from Lovecraft himself, which is a lot of books, and so a lot of people end up playing that a little too heavy. But I was going to ask you if you've ever heard of the card game Arkham Horror that goes into the Path of Carcosa and has the Mython pack for Dim Carcosa. It's a fantastic game. I just wanted to reference for people out there that are kind of maybe looking for something else as well. Like if you're really into the horror section stuff and it's a card game, I had a lot of fun with it, and I like all the imagery they have and everything. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the card game Arkham Horror is a fun play, and if you enjoy playing it and you're interested in a video game adaptation, I would suggest the game World of Horror, which is basically a Junji Ito themed video game version of Arkham Horror.
Yes, I am a big fan of multiple things, so I definitely say if that's something you guys want to go check out, it's definitely
as for the portrayal of King in Yellow mythology and the mythos in Arkham Horror, I would say that it's it certainly falls into the kind of Derlithian interpretation of the King in Yellow that you often find in Chaosium products, especially early products. Again, this is not to complain or even critique. I love that stuff. But our own game is not trying to treat the King in Yellow as part of a larger Lovecraftian pantheon or anything. Instead, we want to take Chambers' work on its own and sort of, look at its commitments and isolation to a larger universe where, Yog-Sothoth exists or what have you. Early work from Chaosium, and I think actually this should, I don't think it can be overstated that popular familiarity with Lovecraft, with Eldritch horror, with horror fiction of a cosmic variety, I mean, we should credit role-playing games for that. We should credit designers like Sandy Peterson, who came up with the Call of Cthulhu game and shared it with the world, and who produced this way where you could get into Lovecraft without just already being, for instance, like me or like us, literature nerds. So that's cool. But unfortunately, or I would say, differently, early Chaosium products they do treat the King in Yellow as being like kind of an appendage to a larger pantheon that's mostly commanded by Lovecraft's sentiments, Lovecraft's sort of philosophical commitments, and is led by the whole parade of creatures in which the King in Yellow is just a participant, is like being led by Cthulhu and Yog-Sothoth and stuff. And that's cool. That's cool. But our to quote the late Joseph Pulver Sr., a really amazing writer, and a man thanks to whom, or partially thanks to whom, people are reading Chambers on his own and seeing him on his own today. Our King in Yellow doesn't have tentacles.
Yeah, no, I see that. It's definitely a very, very interesting piece that you guys have come up with, and it's kind of more. It's got from my eyes, it's got a lot of different like what looks like cultural references. So it's very, very cool looking, and I really, really enjoy the artwork that you guys have, even in the PDF that you guys have for your playtesters.
Looks very good.
I like your little cherub-looking guy. I mean, obviously, like I said, I'm a big fan of. As much as I am not a religious man, I am a very big fan of the literature and stories in the Bible, because they're just actually the fucking craziest shit of all time. But that leads into my next question. Actually, just about the game, which is how do you feel that a DM running your game, like if a DM is coming into their game, is this going to be a game that they can play with the players, so to speak? So like this is going to be like an all-encompassing game, or is it going to be kind of like there's everyone's kind of their own narrator, and then you have like the overarching narrator, if that makes sense?
That's a good question. There are some things that you mentioned right before you asked this question that I want to touch on. In our game's sort of official lore, the King in Yellow is God's undead corpse. In our game's official lore, Carcosa is not an alien city like Relaya beneath the waves of the South Pacific. Carcosa is heaven. It's like the Christian heaven. And it is in ruins. It has been destroyed. Why? Who knows? Probably something you did. But it's destroyed, and God is dead. The angels are undead monsters, and they're coming for you.
Antonio, I told you shouldn't have taken that third horn, you greedy bastard.
Joe.
Good stuff.
You really put me on the carpet here today, Joe. I'm just, I don't know what you want me to tell you. It just, we were just talking. There was some wine. One thing led to another. And these things happen. You know what I'm saying? I can't help it.
You've got the tail tucked away. You've got the 3 horns, and it looks like you got the body of a centipede.
Joe, unlike the King in Yellow in this version, I happen to have tentacles right now. No, I'm kidding. I'm good stuff.
Well, I guess your revelry killed God, and now there's nowhere to die. This is pretty sad. No. Okay. So. Yeah, our official lore takes a lot of sort of biblical imagery and language, because Chambers himself borrowed from that in his own stories. The only tale from his anthology in which the entity, the King in Yellow, even appears is in the shortest story, in the Court of the Dragon, and the King in Yellow appears for the last 2 sentences, and that's it. And he appears in order to quote the Bible as he's, abducting someone to the realm of Carcosa. And Chambers isn't unique in this. He's following in the footsteps of writers like G. de Maupassant and Edgar Allan Poe and Charles Baudelaire, who also, in expressing Gothic ideas, would appeal to biblical stuff. Like Poe's, in The Raven, Poe asks, is there balm in Gilead? Meaning he's asking, does life have purpose? But he's, appealing to biblical stuff. So I wanted to mention that we also draw upon sort of these biblical themes for their imagery and for their historical, cultural.
There's definitely some really crazy shit. If for those of you that don't want to go read religious text, that's fine. There's plenty of videos if you want to go look at it on YouTube. I myself am a reader, so. I encourage you online fanatics to go read a fucking book. Go read a book.
I refuse.
Stop watching. Go read a book.
I refuse to read, sir.
Antonio, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to our wonderful viewers. They're not corrupted yet like you.
Yep, no, that's fair. Apologies.
As always, Professor, I've got a fun on the moral significance of the Leviathan in the Book of Job. So think about it sometime. But not now.
I definitely have my own theories on Leviathan and everything.
Yeah.
And it's a crazy thing.
your last question though, so please remind me of it again. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. It's just I was just asking, like, as a DM, is the DM like an over-encompassing narrator, and then you have like sub-narrators, which are your players? Essentially, what I was asking.
Good. So, our game is a storytelling game, and as such, there are opportunities during each player's turn to not only describe what their character does, but also to fill in the environment and certain details of the circumstances they're in. So, in a 5e game, you know, I say the GM says, or the DM says, you wake up in a prison, and then, you know, the player is supposed to say, oh well, are there any bowls of water around? And it's up to the, you know, but in our game, you know, when you go from player to player, you go from turn to turn, there's a sense in which the director's chair gets passed around a bit. So instead of asking whether there's a bowl of water nearby, a player could just say, all right, so there's a bowl of water nearby, right? And so what I do is, right, they can fill in little details. They're invited to do that. At the same time, all of these little details are in service to a larger narrative that has pacing and chapters, and in fact, the whole narrative of each one-shot game is divided up into 5 pieces. 5 acts. That's why it's called 5 Acts, The King in Yellow. And so the maestro, or the GM, maestro is our fancy special game-specific name, but the maestro is supposed to kind of manage the overall storytelling, fill in the results of players' checks, and also kind of keep track of the pacing from one act to the next. So it is a storytelling game where everyone contributes to the story, but there's sort of a larger, more authoritative role given to the GM. And also, and this is related, the GM does not control some character that goes alongside the PCs, right? So there is no DM PC, or if you're thinking about Ryutama, right, there's no Ryujin, right? There's no like character that the GM plays in their capacity as GM. That's not part of the game. The game is more like you've got a storyteller who's kind of the maestro or the GM, and then when it comes to the details of how this story gets played out and filled in, that's definitely, you know, a lot of it is in the player's hands. Not all of it, but a lot of it is.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty cool, man. I dig that. One of my other questions I have to get into, as a GM, what since like these story elements are kind of like dictated by, you know, a little bit more by the players, like they could say like, oh, I find a little puddle of water, I drink from it, you know, like that's disgusting. But okay, man, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like the DM presence, exactly like what would you say like their whole role is in terms of like the long run? So like from point A to point Z, right at the end of the one shot.
Yeah. Point A to point Z, overall, independently of facilitating the sort of back and forth action between the player's nightmares and waking life and nightmares and waking life, apart from that, the main thing that the GM should do, or the maestro should do in our game, is facilitate circumstances where the player's actions are portrayed as astonishing, criminal, insane, deluded, abnormal, right? So the idea is like, you want to make sure that whatever the player characters do, you want there to be like some people nearby, ordinary people, who are saying, what the fuck? Right? Yeah. Like, what are you doing? Holy, what? Right? Like, you want to simultaneously encourage the PCs to do kind of weird things, and our mechanic of interpreting illustrations does just this. But as they're doing weird things, you want to emphasize how absolutely weird they're acting by having the ordinary people in the universe react with incredulity, disgust, hostility, confusion, right? You want to be someone like, you work at a software company, and one day, because you've read The King in Yellow for the 100th time, you get up and you grab, you know, a plastic fork and start like trying to kill people with it or something, right? You want to like prompt them to do crazy things, but you also want to help frame the story as that by making sure that there are ordinary people in every scene who are reacting to them in that way, right?
Okay.
You want to frame the story, because there are ways. Let's be clear. There are ways to run a TTRPG where, you know, the characters are casting spells and doing handstands and backflips, and you know they're doing this in the middle of a town. But as far as the town is concerned, that's Tuesday, right?
I mean, I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of those things where, like, when people are like, well, you know, like, when you're playing D&D or something, and people are like, well, you know, I have to ask, how common is magic? And I'm like, my man, if you cast Fireball, that guy next to you, the farmer next to you, he's just gonna be pissed that you blew up his farm. Like, he doesn't give a shit that you actually cast it, because he probably knows, like, 6 or 7 other wizards that have come by in this town before. Or, like, even playing, like, separate, even individual games without magic, you're like, oh, this dude, he comes up and he swings his big battle axe and he does this flip and he does it, and you're like, okay, acrobatically and everything, like, these dudes are, like, in war for so long, you know, they're probably used to it, so it's like, impressive in real life thing. It's like, oh man, that's so cool. And then in their version of the world, it's like, that's just fucking disgusting. It'd be like, I'm sitting here, Antonio's like, I drink from the well of life, and I'm like, Antonio, I would like to inform you that is a dog corpse.
Yeah, imagine
definitely how that would work. Apologies, go ahead, Howard. Sorry.
Imagine a town from World of Warcraft, right? Like, the people who just live in that place are like, yeah, we got people casting fireballs and waving their magic at. This is just a thing that happens, right? And in our game, you want to stress that the world is the very opposite of that, even though the players, you know, are told that their characters have magic powers, and their characters seem to have magic powers until the very end, when you reinterpret everything as being not supernatural. But the idea is that you want to make sure that the setting is the very opposite of a World of Warcraft town, right? Like it's an ordinary place. It's like as ordinary as possible, even if it's in, you know, the medieval period or in the future or whatever. The idea is like ordinary people used to ordinary things. You know, there aren't any like magical fairies or fireballs or whatever. It's just like ordinary people going to the grocery store or whatever. And then your character walks in and does something, and the rest of the ordinary people are like, oh my god, and they react in an extreme way.
Antonio, I just imagine
you want to debate that. Yeah.
You just imagine Antonio goes into the grocery store in the game, and he's like, Fireball kills the beast, and it's like a giant Michelin Man statue.
Yeah, oh my!
And he uses Fireball, and the Fireball is just a Molotov.
Yeah, oh,
and then you're like, holy shit, that's bad. Like, wow, dude. You know, the other people at the table are like, bro, that was actually insane. How did you cast that? That's insane. Oh no, we got Orc Knights, and there's just a dude with just a cop with a pistol.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. I must jump in and say that's a perfect example. Like, while you're playing 5X the King in Yellow, your PC might walk into a grocery store and following the instructions they got from the stage play The King in Yellow, they use their magic powers to throw a fireball to exterminate an alien impersonator who's masquerading as the store manager, right? And you do this with heroism and triumph. But then at the end of the game, you look back on it and you decide, well, here's what the news headline said. Maniac with Molotov murders store manager, right? After just running in and just, right? And the idea is that you tell the story one way, full of like high fantasy from your PC's perspective, but not from the rest of the world, right? And then at the end of the game, you have this like reinterpretation where it's like, oh no, you can't cast Fireball. Nobody can do that. This is the real world. What did you do instead? And the player's like, maybe I threw a Molotov. It's like, okay, right? But in the last phase of play, Act 5, that's where you look back at all the weird, crazy stuff that you did with your supernatural powers and try to reinterpret it, you know?
Yeah. And that like I said, man, I think that's it for my questions here. Antonio, I'm gonna let you have the races here for the tip-top end of
Joe,
our
I
segment
fucking wish I could, but you guys kind of touched on like any question I was thinking about asking. Like, I'm not even joking. You guys,
Antonio just riffed into it. I'm just you guys, taking away from you.
You guys did. Like, anything I was coming up with, I was like, nope, fuck, that question got answered. Nope, that question got yeah, I would love to ask some questions. I have nothing at the moment.
Well, Antonio, let me ask you a question.
Go for it.
Let me ask you a question. So this is something for since I've been a DM for so long. Right. I don't usually play as a player myself. Okay. So Antonio, what kind of things as a player do you feel you could feel like you would really want to kind of dig your hands into?
From the experience like this, from a player, what I would like to feel, I guess, I'm hearing all this. I'm looking through the PDF. I'm trying to just picture myself playing this game. I guess I would want to feel, because to me it seems very chaotic in a good way. It seems very chaotic, and I'd want that. That'd be something I want to take away from it. Is this chaotic, fun feel from the game? If I feel like if I could get this out of the game, that'd be a good night for me. Like if we get this one shot, we run through it for 3 or 4 or 5 hours, and at the end of the day, I feel like that I'm just having a blast, just like being quote unquote affected by the King in Yellow. We'll put it that way. I don't want to be insensitive towards anyone. Yeah. Delusional from the King in Yellow. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, putting it that, like, I think that'd be very cool if that's the experience I get out of the game. For me personally, I think that'd be very fun. Just way to go about it, yeah.
Ooh! I did find an archived question I had.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So this one's a little smaller, just a light one. But so this one's just like just for the people out there that want to maybe experience the 5X King in Yellow, right? How can they expect that this has been like play tested and kind of like played through with a bunch of people and kind of have like a lot of different experiences that they can maybe they can see that you have maybe pulled up, or maybe that you have a way of like expressing it?
Yes. So, a few different things. First, our game was rigorously play tested over the course of 20 months. With a variety of internal playtesters, and we did statistical analysis on the questionnaires that we circulated after each playtest. In some cases, it was like twice a week or more. And there were 2 versions of the game which we not entirely, but mostly threw out. I think that one mark of professionalism is that you don't consider something to be finished or even good just because you've spent lots of time working on it. Sometimes you work a long time on a product and it turns out it's not exactly what you need or want. And so we got some very incisive and very excellent feedback during those 20 months of development, where everyone from just serial RPG players to writers at Chaosium and more, they told us, no, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, and we kept what worked, and we ignored. We kept in place, not ignored, but we kept in place the things that did work, and we threw out the stuff that didn't. And we ended up with we basically redesigned the game 3 times. So now it's been a while, and we are sure that we have a game that works. We are not one of those Kickstarters that says, please pay us money, and if you do, we'll come up with a game. We've already written much of the book, designed the whole game. We're still, of course, interested in what people think on a sort of low-key external playtest, because the rules are free. You can get them on our Kickstarter site. But the game is absolutely playtested. It's absolutely vetted so that it's playable. A lot of people have fun with it. They do their own things with it. That's the first thing. I'm sorry, you asked a 2-part question, I believe.
Just if you play tested it and kind of what, just the amount of so the other part of it is just, can people kind of do you have specifics that they might be able to pull from, quotes from players or anything like that?
I don't have direct quotes, but I can cite our the analysis and sort of the surveys that we generated out of people's feedback, a lot of people really enjoyed the fact that there was this creative mechanic where you get to think of scary pictures and then interpret them as instructions. That's actually the positive feedback around that is what led it to being a core mechanic. And also a lot of people said that it was cool to have a character who's prompted to do eccentric things and then later have a stage of play or a phase of play where you get to, reinterpret those events and imagine that, do a kind of like, I don't know, Diary of a Madman type thing with it.
Hey, that's pretty good. I mean, I love it.
In regards to something Antonio said, I think one of our design goals was to allow for the game to feel chaotic without feeling disjointed.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's
These are very different.
difficult.
Yeah.
To get
Very
through.
right. What's the difference between chaotic and just disjointed? Well, disjointed is, to put it crudely, one damn thing after another. Unrelated, just random, just like different things.
That's like saying, right? Disjointed versus chaotic. Chaotic is obviously completely different, and you're subject to one idea compared to,
Yeah, as I'm thinking of it, our game is chaotic, but it is not disjointed because in preparation for the game, one of the things that the maestro does, or the GM does, is they come up with a sort of theme that ties everything together, right? A certain sort of idea, right? And this idea is meant to inform both a supernatural threat that the PCs face, as well as kind of a mundane threat that explains why they might be acting so strange, right? So maybe the threat, or maybe the theme is like falling, right? And so like, what the supernatural threat is, maybe there's something falling from the sky that's going to destroy the world, or maybe there's a planet that's falling from another galaxy into us, or there's some supernatural thing. But then there's also like falling as in maybe your characters work at a company and there's falling stock prices and there's falling employment and there's an economic depression, and maybe people are jumping off of jumping out of the skyscraper and they're falling to their death because, right? But the idea is that like there are certain mechanics we can't. I mean, going into them in detail, I'd be happy to, but I don't know what our time is. But we've got mechanics where the GM is like they're easy to follow, but the idea is that across the chaos and across the otherwise disjointed action, there are ways to string things together through literary themes and narrative themes, right? So,
hey, that's plenty fine. I love that. And like I said, that's for me a DM's dream is to write and make sure that my story collaborates. But yeah, man, I really love what you got going on. I like the game. I like what you got narratively for it. I think everything, at least so far that we've chatted about, has got me interested, intrigued to see what will come of it, because I'm also a big fan of community and I love following pages and following what people do. And of course, you're already a part of our Discord, and so I look forward to seeing any expansions or any kind of other things you guys have. I really do look forward to that, and I love looking at it and playing different games and getting together and hanging out with everyone. And I just gotta say, thanks a ton, man, for coming on here and talking about it. I had a blast talking about a little bit of literature. I don't get to do that a lot.
No, definitely.
I don't get to talk a lot about books and everything, because I have, like I said, I don't get to tell people a lot that I like to read Bible stories and all kinds of stuff, because it's crazy and it's wacky, and it gets a little like most people just kind of look at it.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're fine.
No, you're good, man. You're good. No, like I said, I think it's all something that we all I get excited about, at least.
Yeah. Don't forget to. So we're just a little over halfway through our Kickstarter goal, and we're just a little under halfway through the campaign. So, if you manage to hear this recording at a time where it's still going on, please come help us bring the stream to life. Pledge your support to the forces of Carcosa today. You can also check out info about the game at our page nilhemoth.com, nilhemoth.com, nilhemoth. And also you could check out a lot of videos and other content I've made at PhD&D. That's my YouTube channel, PhD&D, where I present 5e material and discuss role-playing games generally from a perspective informed by academic philosophy and literature. Thank you so much for having me on. Both Antonio and Joe, thanks so much.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I went ahead and subscribed to your YouTube. I'm gonna have to watch a video or two. I always need more content to look forward to. So yes, of course, thank you, and thank you to Antonio for sticking it out and being a good sport and not going ravenous with his third horn and large tail upon the gods here. But so. Yeah, and if anybody's interested, if you guys are interested in more content from us, you guys can go check out our Patreon. We've got our Reemergence 1.03 up right now, and the 1.05, our finalized version of Reemergence, will be going up on Kickstarter here in, I believe, September. Backer Kit. You're right, Backer Kit in September. And Halloween night, you can look forward to on Patreon that we're going to have Parasitic Paradigm, our very, very survival-based TTRPG with zombies, maybe perhaps. Interesting. And I look forward to that and the release of our backer kit. And I look forward to the release and hopefully fully funded PhD&D, the 5X King in Yellow. I look forward to all of it and all of our games here. So, obviously, I gotta say, remember DMs, stay dastardly.